Folks, a popular Florida musician is dead this morning as a result of being killed by a Palm Beach Gardens cop after car trouble on an interstate. 31-year-old Corey Jones left a gig around 3 a.m. when his car broke down on the highway. While the drummer waited for a tow truck, he was approached by Numan Raja, a plainclothes police officer, in an unmarked car. Moments later, Jones was shot and killed. The Palm Beach Gardens Police Department has kept pretty quiet since Sunday, but did release a statement Monday saying, as the officer exited his vehicle, he was suddenly confronted by an armed subject. As a result of the confrontation, the officer discharged his firearm, resulting in the death of the subject, Corey Jones. As part of the department policy, Officer Raja has been put on unpaid administrative leave, and the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is conducting an independent investigation. Our producers reached out to the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department for further comment, but have received no response. I want to talk about this with our panel, Lauren Victoria Burke, Managing Editor of Politic365.com, Douglas Sloan, co-founder of the National Capital Strategy Group, and Jabir Burley, Senior Campaigner for Amnesty International USA. And so the cops are saying that Jones had a weapon. We don't know that. We haven't seen anything like that. We haven't seen the evidence. But if it's 3 a.m. and somebody pulls over in an unmarked car and is in plain clothes, and I don't know what you're coming to do, I'm not thinking you might be a cop.
Yeah, I'm either going to run or I'm going to stand my ground. And so if he didn't identify himself as a cop, how is the victim supposed to know? I think while we don't know all of the circumstances, what I will say is that this police department want to get ahead of the issue. They need to make sure that this whole process is very transparent and to make sure that if the officer is at fault, that there needs to be accountability measures put in place.
This seems to take things to a new level. I mean, this could have been you or me on the side of that road on 95 with car problems. This wasn't just a young teenager that was running from the police or something else where the police are going to say, oh, he shouldn't have ran, or oh, he was near or fit the description. This guy was a model citizen by all accounts, wasn't fitting any description, was on the side of the road with car trouble that I think we all have experienced at some time or another in our lives, and suddenly he's shot by the police. So, you know, this really just seems to metastasize the problem that police are facing in dealing with black males in general.
And again, Lauren, somebody out there, they're saying, look, you can't jump to conclusions. But here's what we do know. Corey Jones is dead.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, he's not coming back.
Right.
And I just simply can't imagine I'm waiting on a tow truck and then all of a sudden it escalates and he ends up dead.
Yeah, I mean, we can't jump to conclusions, but this is a very familiar scenario where you have a plainclothes officer. You've had this in the Sean Bell case. Obviously, in the Trayvon Martin case, George Zimmerman is not a police officer, but it always struck me as interesting that Trayvon Martin was supposed to know that George Zimmerman thought he was authority. You know, you're supposed to read somebody's mind. So this is a very prevalent scenario where you have somebody in plain clothes. It really comes down to I mean, the gun issue obviously is going to be huge, but even if he had a gun, you know, doesn't he have the right to stand his ground? I mean,
right.
Isn't this Florida? Isn't this a stand your ground? I mean, doesn't he have the right to defend himself if he thinks somebody's approaching to harm him?
But also is the idea of why shoot to kill? Why make it escalate to that it's deadly force and not, if the officer was trying to defend himself, why not shoot to injure and to stop the pursuit of the individual coming towards him? But yet he shot to kill.
Well, and the other thing is that I'm curious about, I'm very curious to know, this is unmarked car, plain clothes.
Right.
Was there dash cam video? Was there a body cam? Was this guy off duty? What also is his department procedure? Because you might be a cop in an unmarked car, but if it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a highway and you pull up behind me, I don't know what your intentions are. And also, again, if I'm putting myself in that situation, so I'm waiting, car pulls up, headlights on. I can't see anything what's behind those headlights. I have no idea who is there behind those headlights. And so I'm very curious to know this story. I'm curious to know if Jones, if the officer says he ran up to him, the officer get out. Because again, I can imagine myself at night, and I'm sitting there, and I don't, dude. Hey, man, who are you?
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that if there's no dash camera, we only have the officer word. In this case.
And I think they said that there was no body camera. He was plain clothes, so there's no body camera. I'm not sure about the dash cam. I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out as well, because this isn't the typical white cop black man. This guy is, I think, Indian or Numan Raja. I'm not sure about his ethnicity or anything like that.
The system of police force is systematic.
It is the typical black male getting shot by law enforcement.
That's true.
That's the problem. And we've had black cops that have
different
shot black people. I mean, that's not
It's a system,
new.
not an individual. Yeah,
Right.
we'll talk about the system.
And of course, more details we find out. And one of the things that I'm also curious about, if it's Corey Jones, did he have a permit? Same thing. I mean, so it's so many factors here. But again, at the end of the day, here you have this guy dead, and I'm very curious to know what this officer had to say, and also what the procedures were. Another story that we've been looking out for, folks, dealing with politics here in the nation's capital. Vice President Joe Biden, according to various reports, has either decided he's running for president. He's close to deciding he's running for president. He may soon decide he's running for president. No idea exactly what it is. It's been months of speculation as to whether or not he's going to jump in the race. The decision could come within the next 48 hours. Fox News chief White House correspondent Ed Henry, I work with Ed over at CNN. He said, quote, 3 sources close to the VP telling me he's expected to announce he is running, but the sources are all urging caution on 48-hour timeline. Jonathan Karl of ABC tweeted that he said a source said no decision had been made. Folks, what about this? I mean, if you look at the current polling data, new poll out shows Hillary Clinton at 49%, leading Bernie Sanders in a huge way, Joe Biden at 18%. I still believe with Biden there, that's also based on he's actually not in the race. That's just sort of like how you feel about it. What do you believe Joe Biden, Vice President Biden, would do to this Democratic race?
Well, I think it's hard to say. You know, it's always hard to try and quarterback these things. But the bottom line is, I think the numbers show that he comes in and that subtracts from Hillary's numbers, but it doesn't take her out of first place. And you also have to look at the phenomena where, you know, everybody talks great about you when you're not in the race. As soon as you jump in the race, oh, well, things change. Let's take a closer look at this guy. You know, he's been in politics a long time. He has a history. People are going to start delving back into his history. You know, I think he had an issue with making remarks on the campaign trail and not attributing them to someone
First of all, that was 1988.
It was.
So
we'll bring it up.
Yeah, you can bring it up. That's 27 years ago. You also have a campaign right now where you got Donald Trump mix up all kind of stuff, and clearly that has no impact on that race whatsoever.
The bigger issue for Joe Biden is criminal justice reform. He was a lead author of the Clinton crime bill. We live in a time right now where we're reevaluating justice policy. Obviously, Black Lives Matter has justice policy at the forefront. They've got all the Democratic candidates on the record talking, and they've met with them, talking about justice policy. And Joe Biden has already indicated no regrets about the Clinton crime bill. That is going to be a problem for him because we live in another age for the Democratic side.
But here's the deal, though. He authored the Clinton crime. He was the author behind that. But what you also have is a vice president who can say, I've been VP under President Barack Obama. You look at the changes that we have been making to criminal justice. You look at Eric Holder. So he has the ability to say, plus this is also a guy who can say, yeah, there also was a time when I wasn't for same-sex marriage, being a devout Catholic, and all of a sudden we saw how that flipped. And so I don't necessarily think that's going to be as big as some folks are making it out. Clearly he has to deal with the issue. But I think this guy's going to say, what did we do for the past 6.5 years?
Well, that's why I think, one, I don't think he's got to get in. But if he does, I think it's going to be a split 3-way vote. And I say that because he's going to be polling supporters both from Bernie Sanders as well as from Hillary. The problem that you're going to have with Hillary is that, again, he authored the bills, and one thing Hillary can say is that was my husband's policy versus Biden actually wrote the policy. But I do think
it's going to be a little hard, though, for her to say that's my husband's policies when you're also running on your husband's legacy, too.
No, I fully agree.
It's a little hard trying to say, well, I'm going to take claim for this, but I ain't gonna take credit for that.
Yeah, no, but that's what I think. I think one of the things that's going to come to play is that no one could have won election back in that time without supporting the crime bill or supporting tough on crime. I think so. In many cases,
it actually, the '94 crime bill didn't have all that much to do with the '96 election. The point is, we're passing policy right now repealing those policies.
No,
so
but true.
We're
but
passing a bill through Congress right now
that
he has to explain. That's the problem.
And I think
he's going to have to explain why this bill moving through Congress right now is counter to what he stood for in 1994. It affected hundreds of thousands of people. It's kind of hard to explain that if you're running for president and you're at a debate and you're asked about justice policy. And, you know, the other candidates get to say, well, we don't stand for these things, and then Joe Biden is probably going to stand up for it. That's what I would predict. Because he's not indicated, unlike Bill Clinton, who went to the NAACP and said, look, this was a mistake.
Well, that was convenient.
Biden hasn't said that.
Well,
Biden
that was
hasn't
convenient.
come close to saying that.
Because
so
he
when
can't.
Black Lives
He's
Matter
running
talks
the
to
race.
him, he's got a problem.
I don't think he has a problem. I think
with black voters.
I don't
which is
think
a
he
huge
does.
block on
I
this.
think the question
you.
is going to be is that yes, one thing I hate is that when people say the politicians can't change their mind. I actually support that. New evidence, new data supports.
He
that
hasn't
you can
changed
change
his
your
mind. That's the problem.
Yeah, but what he can
hasn't
say
changed
is that he supported it during that time with the information
and he supports
had,
it now. That's the point. He supports the same bad policy now. That's the problem.
I don't think that's the case. I think that
but again, I think what you're also looking at is that first of all, huge head start already. Look at Iowa, New Hampshire. I talked to some folks on yesterday, and many believe that if you're Vice President Joe Biden and you get in this race, you start in South Carolina. Right. African Americans make up more than 40% of all Democratic voters in the South Carolina primary. If he jumps in and he goes right to South Carolina, he is going to be targeting black folks directly.
Right.
If all of a sudden Joe Biden gets in this race and he wins South Carolina, or it's extremely close to South Carolina, all of a sudden this is a whole different ball game, because I think when you go to Super Tuesday and all of a sudden you're going to Georgia and you're going later to Florida and you're going to those states where you have high African American turnout, and you're going to have Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden going after the white blue collar voter as well. I mean,
Bernie Sanders is going to win Iowa and New Hampshire. That's the first thing that's going to happen. So you're right. The first real competition, if Biden gets in, is South Carolina. I don't see how he wins. It's all about black votes in South Carolina. And frankly, Hillary Clinton is doing pretty well policy-wise with the issues that black voters care about. You're right. It's the first real contest for Biden is South Carolina.
I think that's a sound strategy, and that's exactly what I would advise him to do, because if he jumps in right now and comes in on Iowa and New Hampshire, he's going to get mopped. He's going to go the floor mopped with them.
So you don't think he gets in?
Nope.
What do you think?
I don't think he gets it. I don't really see a pathway to victory for him unless something happens to Hillary.
Something happens to Hillary, then. But here's the though. Let me remind people that it was at this point,
right,
in 2007, that then that U.S. Senator Barack Obama was down 20 points to Hillary Clinton, and it wasn't until they had that debate in Iowa, where she flubbed the question on driver's license for illegal immigrants, that opened the door. And then all of a sudden the race changed. And then the ground game came in, they go to Iowa, he wins Iowa. I'm simply not buying the whole idea in terms of that there's no pathway to victory. Because the reality is this here. If this becomes a three-way race, don't tell me Vice President Joe Biden can't do well with superdelegates.
No, I think he can.
He actually can't, because already a bunch of elected officials have pledged to Hillary Clinton, which you saw how she rushed to get the commitment.
Of course.
Yeah, but there's a lot right before.
My whole point, first of all, we say a bunch, how many?
Yeah, it's a whole bunch that are
like what?
A lot. I mean, you're talking about everybody in Virginia.
No. How many?
How many?
200, 300?
She's got the commitments of most of your elected officials in Congress. Those are your super
Yeah, but here's the deal, though. Here's what we also know, and we've seen it. Somebody else gets in, folks go,
yeah,
I got you.
Look at Elizabeth Warren is a prime example. She talked about that, yes, she signed the letter in addition to all the women in Congress in support of Hillary potentially running, but that was not a sign-off on her specifically supporting Hillary.
And here's what we also know. And all of a sudden, you start running and numbers change. And all of a sudden, you show momentum, folks go, okay, who's now Secretariat? Who's now am I going to jump behind?
Joe Biden.
And so,
I don't think he's getting
a
that.
lot of
Joe
time.
Biden.
no, but here's the deal.
Money to make up
but
on.
again,
You gotta
though,
raise
but
a
again,
lot
though,
of
but
money.
this is the problem. You keep saying Joe Biden has a history of losing.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton lost.
Yeah.
Okay, but
I mean,
she lost to the best politician of our century.
She
he was a very talented
she
politician.
lost to Obama, but she lost to Obama.
Uh-huh.
But Joe Biden gets to stand there and say, as vice president under this president, look. You can't. Now she can say, "Yeah, I was Secretary of State,"
yeah.
but here's what he can also say: "I was in the room negotiating with Congress." I'm not dismissing this, and I'm telling you right now, I've seen him in action. I've seen how a lot of folks feel about him, and there are also donors who are saying, "I'll get behind this guy," and all of a sudden you look up. And you get in, and a month in, you raise 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 million. Super PAC comes up. Again, things change real fast. And at the end of the day, ain't one vote being cast. Not a single vote. And so a whole lot can change October, November, December, January when that first ballot is cast.
If he gets in.
I think he gets in.
He's getting in.
No, I think he gets
He's
in.
getting in. Yeah.
I don't think he gets in, but
Lead with the best.
like you said, all the sources, all the inside people are saying this guy's getting ready to do it.
I think he gets in. So, folks, send me a tweet at Roland S. Martin or go to our Facebook page and let me know if you think Vice President Joe Biden gets in the race. Coming up, headlines: Oprah Winfrey gets behind Weight Watchers, and man, stock goes high. She makes $70 million in a day. We'll also talk to the writer of a controversial article in November's Ebony magazine that is asking what happens to the Cosby Show legacy now that Bill Cosby's reputation is forever damaged. Plus, Bishop T.D. Jakes explains why discovering your destiny, Jamira, has a lot to do with staying in your lane. It's 17 after the hour, News 19 TV1.